Tab S7 Plus versus the iPad Pro, and welcome to All-Star Space, where we test all the devices for you as extensively as possible. So many of you have asked for this comparison, and we have gone all out and tested as much as we possibly could, including the two pens. And yes, we have found a way to demonstrate the differences to you in your living room. If you have a favorite, let us know right now in the comments below, and buckle up and enjoy.
We can turn the whole world around. I'm in the backseat really trying to hold it down. And if you up down from the lost and found.
Okay, you guys know the drill. Some housekeeping first. Here's the iPad Pro cellular version versus the Tab S7 Plus 5G version. You can see there's already $200 difference almost. 256 GB of storage. But let's have a look what we get per gigabyte storage and pricing, what we pay for that. Pay for 1 GB of storage for the iPad Pro, $525, and then $450 on the Tab S7 Plus. You could argue that pricing is not that much of a difference. I mean, $200, have it or don't have it, right, to start with. But then you could say, okay, maybe it is more powerful and that has less and more. We'll see about that. The most interesting part, however, is when you open the box and what comes in the box. Well, let's start with the iPad. The iPad Pro, basically what you see is what you get. There's nothing else apart from the charger, of course. But then let's add a pen. Oops, price is going up. Let's add a keyboard because we want to really type on something rather than the screen. Oops, and the price goes up again. And you come to a whopping $1,863. When we then go to the Tab S7 Plus, the pen is included, so the price needle doesn't move. And we add a keyboard, Samsung's own keyboard. Oops, the price needle also doesn't move because Samsung has some offers in places somewhere around the world, especially here, where you can get that keyboard cover for free. If you were to buy the keyboard, it will cost you $225, so it is really to showcase you that the accessories you also have to consider when buying a device. So look, we get so many questions if these devices can be a laptop replacement, and I want to start off with some hardware housekeeping here. If you put them both on the scale, you can see the weight difference already. It's something you want to or have to consider if you put it in your bag and carry it around, right? So the pen's obviously very lightweight, but there's also a difference. The keyboards, however, there can you see a bigger difference already here. And when you then put them all together, like on the left-hand side, you can see the iPad Pro versus the Tab S7 Plus, and there's a huge difference already in, in weight when you carry it all together. As for the keyboards, they're fundamentally two different designs. The Tab S7 Plus comes in two parts here. One goes on the back, it's really strong, magnetically adhesive, and the other part goes in the front, and then you can basically take them off or, whatever you want to do. It kind of makes it more flexible, and it's kind of saying, okay, here I am, I'm a tablet. When you move on to the iPad Pro keyboard, however, that's a very sturdy, heavy keyboard. And the difference here is it's really kind of in your face when you put it down and it says, I'm here to stay. I'm the desktop solution you've always been looking for, but I'm not a desktop. It also has an additional port, so you can basically put it on a desk, charge it via the keyboard, and then put a peripheral on the or in the iPad Pro on the side. If you do decide to buy the pen for the iPad Pro, the pen goes on the top, and that's the only place it will magnetically attach to the iPad Pro, and it is the only place where it will charge, so you will not be able to put it anywhere else. Unlike the Tab S7 Plus, you have basically the back of the Tab S7 Plus, and then it's protected and then it charges there. It's also the only place where it will charge, but then it will also stick on the top or on the bottom of the Tab S7 of the tablet itself. It will not charge there, but it will stay there. When you hold both devices side by side, you can already see a difference here in the aspect ratio. We will talk about that later on when we do our 8K footage test. And you can see that the Tab S7 Plus is narrow, the iPad Pro is tall. In terms of camera placement, you can see on the left-hand side, you have the iPad Pro, and then you have the Tab S7 camera placement, which is much better for video calls. We will also cover that later on. In terms of build quality, they're very similar. Both feel really good in your hands. Space gray for both tablets here, and I can't really fault any of them. So look, when you look at them really close side by side, they're so similar. Apart from that aspect ratio, tall versus narrow, thickness is pretty much the same. Volume rockers on the same side. The power on and off button for the iPad Pro is on the top versus next to the volume rocker on the Tab S7 Plus. The place for the SIM cards is almost identical. Of course, the Tablet 7 Plus has expandable storage in that slot as well. And then you turn it around, you see the speakers on each side, and you have that keyboard connector for the Tablet 7 Plus, a 3-pin, whereby you have that on the iPad Pro on the back. And then you basically have the USB-C port, one for each device. What you don't have on both devices is a headphone jack. In terms of biometric logins, they're very similar. The only difference here is that the Tablet 7 Plus has an additional in-display fingerprint sensor. Okay, let's move on to the juicy bit. The screen technologies are the difference in both screens. And on the Tablet 7 Plus, we have the Super AMOLED screen versus the iPad Pro, which has an IPS technology. I'm not going to get into all the details here because I want to really show you and try to showcase you what both screens look like when we play 8K footage, 4K footage, and so on. The first test we did, however, was test UFO to see what the refresh rate gives us. The Tablet 7 Plus, of course, has the 120 Hz, and the iPad Pro comes up with a 60 Hz refresh rate here. So while you guys enjoy the 8K footage here, the iPad Pro on top, Tablet 7 Plus on the bottom, both have a different aspect ratio. I wanted to touch on that quickly. I think it is important. Where is 4:3 better? 4:3 is for the iPad Pro. For web browsing, it is really good for web browsing because most mobile websites are made with a kind of responsive design and they adjust to the entire screen if you like. Also good for reading books and magazines. 4:3 experience is perfect for that. 16:10. When is that better? Tablet 7 Plus 16:10. Well, for watching movies and TV shows because they're made in 16:9 and the screens are kind of ideal for that. It's kind of a proper screen, full screen experience. But also good for reading comic books. The longer aspect ratio is perfect for that. And where are both 4:3 and 16:10 are equal? For playing games, because it doesn't matter. They kind of fill your screen anyway, irrespective of your aspect ratio. And I think you guys need to make that decision, or it is important to consider what you want to do with your device. So now you had a chance to look at them side by side and you probably say, well, I can't really see a difference. Well, you have to see it in real life because once you put the Super AMOLED screen next to the iPad Pro with the IPS technology, it looks dull. The iPad Pro looks dull. When you have the iPad Pro by itself, it looks absolutely stunning. It's almost different colors. It's like so vibrant on the Tablet 7 Plus that you really ask yourself, is there something wrong with the iPad Pro screen? Again, it is really only when you put them side by side. However, all of this changes when you go outside in the bright sunlight, and you know the drill. When we have some sun, we just grab the iPhone, so apologies for the footage here. But you can see the iPad Pro is super non-reflective, right? There is no reflection really. You can actually work in bright sunlight if you wish to do so. Whereby the Tablet 7 Plus, however, it's super reflective and it will probably be difficult to see something on your screen in bright sunlight, but you have to make that decision. How many times will you work outside with your device? And moving on to the performance results for both devices, and you probably know the theme already of it if you have researched that before. And I want to start with the Geekbench 5 results here, and you can see that there is a huge difference in multi-core. Single core is kind of similar, is already a difference there, but when it comes to multi-core, you can see a massive difference. The iPad Pro basically charges ahead. And that kind of is the theme for all the other tests we did here. Whether that be the base Mark III web application test, you can see difference here, iPad Pro versus Tablet 7 Plus. And then the Antutu scores here. Also, the iPad Pro is really kind of charging ahead, but does it make a difference in real life? And we're gonna move over to working on Office application. And Tony likes her Excel sheets and PowerPoint presentations. So Excel, you have no difference whatsoever in both devices. Formulas, everything is working well here. PowerPoint, we really throw some heavy pictures at both PowerPoint presentations, one for the iPad Pro, one for the Tablet 7 Plus. And I have to say that the iPad Pro performed better, and that is simply due to the internal power. It was choppier on the Tablet 7 Plus, but you really have to ask yourself, how many times will you do that really heavy PowerPoint presentation on your tablet? And hopefully that section helped you a bit because it is pretty much very similar. It was slightly choppier on the Tablet 7 Plus. I want to move on to the keyboard one more time. The reason I want to move on to the keyboard is because the iPad Pro is called Pro and it sells a really expensive keyboard, Magic Keyboard, with it. And here's what you don't get on the Magic Keyboard, and maybe that's the magical part about it. You do not get physical function keys. You will also not get a physical escape key. And yes, you can remap keys internally, but that kind of defeats the whole object of having a good keyboard with your Pro device. However, the trackpad is much better on the iPad Pro keyboard than on the Tab S7 Plus. I also wanted to briefly touch on the video editing part, and we have KineMaster installed for both devices. No issues here. The only difference really is, and that's kind of my conclusion at the end also, that is the Tab S7 Plus has more integration, and that's a software thing, right? More integration, I mean you can basically get more footage from externally. Cloud-based, whatever that is you use, right? The iPad Pro is very closed up with what you can and cannot use externally. However, if you want to use a really good video editing program on the iPad Pro, that is LumaFusion, and here you have way more options and you can really do some heavy 4K editing with no issues. Next one up is writing experience with your pen, in case you do want to have that pen on a tablet, right? So left hand side iPad Pro, right hand side the Tab S7 Plus. Both manufacturers claim to have a latency of 9 milliseconds for their devices and pens. And I can say that I couldn't feel any difference here in writing apart from how it is done. And I'm gonna try and really give you guys the best impression possible, so stay tuned, and I'm gonna be quiet now, and hopefully you can then see and hear, more importantly hear, what it is writing on those tablets. So hopefully that experiment worked and you guys could really hear the difference, and it is more like glass, writing on glass with the iPad Pro, whereby on the Tab S7 Plus it's kind of really suspension like when you have your S Pen and writing on that screen. But let me know in the comments below if you did hear a difference. But let's move on to the cameras. I wanted to show you the cameras and what the camera quality and the microphone quality is like.
This is the rear camera and microphone of the iPad Pro.
This is the rear camera and microphone of the Tab S7 Plus.
Yeah. In 2010, thought I was doing something. And now I'm rapping with a crew or something. I guess the track don't really stick unless he's gluing something.
This is the Tab S7 Plus, and this is what I would look like and sound like on a video conference. And now the Tab S7 Plus with USB-C headphones. This is what I sound like and, of course, look like. And this is how I look and I sound on the iPad Pro. And this is how I look and sound on the iPad Pro. And this is how I look and I sound when I'm using USB-C headphones on the iPad Pro.
I don't know what happened with the iPad Pro. I just didn't like the USB-C headphones. It worked fine on the Tab S7 Plus, but we still wanted to showcase you that you can also see the difference in camera placement when you have a video call, and realistically you will look at the screen and not at the camera on the side for the iPad Pro. But let's move on to the speaker test. That is also an interesting part. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention is that the microphones sound more bass-like, or they sound better on the Tab S7 Plus, but it is my opinion again. Let me know in the comments below what you think.
To impress like it's prom night. And when you live in top shelf, you know you gotta set the bar high. Had the same dream since we was kids. Big trips, big cars, and even bigger cribs. Never thought that it would happen just the way it did. Fast forward that now, it's just the way we live. Let's get food and drinks. My mood makes you think that this life's made for a king.
Couple of things for the speaker test. The iPad Pro sounds more bass-like. It really has more bass, but it is not as loud as the Tab S7 Plus. I had to turn up the volume here so you guys can hear that better. But the differentiation is really that the Tab S7 Plus is louder, but the iPad Pro has more bass. As for the battery life, Netflix full brightness, same movie over and over again until the battery dies. 1020 for the Tab S7 Plus and 850 for the iPad Pro. In terms of charging time, a full charge from a completely depleted battery takes 220 for the iPad Pro, so it is faster than the Tab S7 Plus with 2 hours and 50 minutes. And this leads me to the conclusion. You have two very different ecosystems. You have iPadOS on one side and then you have Android on the other side. And I cannot make that decision for you which one you're going to go for. However, I can share the experience I had with the most powerful Android tablet, Tab S7 Plus on one side, and the most powerful Apple tablet, the iPad Pro, on the other side with iPadOS. The best way to explain it though is that I felt more locked in with the iPad. and I had more freedom with the Tab S7 Plus. Let me explain. When I wanted to download something here, I know you don't download stuff anymore, you have the cloud and stuff, but I needed test footage here, I need some documents on my Tab S7 Plus. I had no issues. I felt like I had to go through hoops on the iPad Pro. It feels more like it is really protecting what can go in and what comes out. It's a great security aspect for sure. But to give you an example, we know Fortnite, we have an issue here in the iPad Pro with Fortnite. But if Apple, for example, decides tomorrow you will not get Netflix because they have a court case going on, then you simply will not get Netflix on your iPad Pro. And I know it's an example, but these are the things you need to consider. Are you happy with being logged in the iPad Pro? Then this is the most powerful device you can get. Do you want more freedom and you're happy with your Android tablet? Then the Tab S7 Plus is for you. Guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video and hopefully we can help you guiding through the process. Let us know in the comments below if you have any questions. Jens here and Tony, of course, from All-Star Space. Peace out.
Floating down the Riviera, now I'm Elon Musk. Find a little spot in the shade, pink lemonade, pink lemonade.